Once again, I've got a cup of coffee, no biscuits. So I'm going to make some biscuits. But these aren't just any ordinary biscuits. These are old biscuits. These date back to the late Tudor period, early Stuart period in the UK. Okay, these are going to be Knots, spelled Knotts, also known as Gumballs, Gumballs. Now, these originate from a collection of receipts, i.e. collection of recipes, which were begun by a Mary Cholmondeley, and she used to record all these different culinary and medicinal recipes, or receipts as they used to call them then, in a book. Well, she got married, and she married the Reverend Henry Fairfax, who was the rector of Bolton Abbey, or Bolton Percy, sorry, a place near Tadcaster, which I think is in Yorkshire. Anyway, he decided to take on this book and add to it. So, this is a recipe for knots from Henry Fairfax's recipe book, dated around 1626 to 1635. For that, you're going to need some sugar, butter, softened, unsalted, 2 egg whites, 5 egg yolks, some flour, I'll tell you quantities later, rose water, ground mace, caraway seeds and salt. I think that's it. And of course an oven to cook it in. So, better get baking. The Reverend Fairfax recipe reads: take 12 yolks of eggs and 5 whites, a pound of siesta sugar, half a pound of butter washed in rose water, 3/4 of an ounce of mace finely beaten, a little salt dissolved in rose water, half an ounce of caraway seeds. Mingle all these together with as much flour as you will work up it in. Make it into knots or rings or whatever fashion you prefer. Bake them as biscuit bread and upon pie plates. So basically, we're going to make a biscuit and shove it in the oven. So I've just put my oven on at 190. And what I've got here is 500 grams of just plain flour. I've got 160 grams of butter. I've got will have half a tablespoon of rose water. I've got 200 grams of sugar. I've already told you I've got 5 egg yolks, 2 egg whites, 2 teaspoons of caraway seeds, half a teaspoon of ground mace, and half a teaspoon of salt. Now, during the Tudor period, so really predating Henry Fairfax's book a little bit, the Tudors used to like adding sugar, glazing their sort of biscuits and cakes things with sugar. So we're going to make the biscuits, and then when they're cooled, we may decorate some of them with a bit of icing, which is in keeping, like I just said. So, first thing we need to do is start sort of combining some of these ingredients. Remember how we said the butter needs to be washed in rose water. Okay, so I'm going to take I've got my flour in a big bowl because that's going to be the final mixing bowl. Okay, but because most of these other ingredients are going to end up going in here before we go in there, I've got another bowl. So we're going to put half a tablespoon of rose water into that bowl. If we can do icing, we'll use some rose water later as well. And then what we're going to do is add the butter to that rose water. It's got really soft in here. I'm just going to attempt to mix that together. It's not really going to ram it, to be honest. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in the sugar, and then this is where possibly we're going to switch to a whisk, but we'll see. What we want to do is basically cream this butter, rose water and sugar all together. The next thing we're going to do, so that's me butter and sugar over there, is we just want to whisk these egg yolks, and then we're going to whisk the egg whites. Now we're not trying to whisk it up like a meringue, okay, and then what we're actually going to do is, having whisked the yolks separate from the whites, we're going to then chuck the two together. So I've got another little slightly bigger bowl there, because that will probably make my life easier, but we'll see. So I'm just going to give these a good whisking, and then I'm going to move on and do the whites. I whisked the eggs, the yolks and the whites. I've now mixed the two together, and rather than getting another bowl dirty, I think I can just about fit it in there. And what we're now going to do is going to add that salt, the caraway seeds and the freshly ground mace, and we're just going to beat them together, and then I'm going to tip that into the buttery, sugary goodness. So we're almost there with all our bits combined. Okay, like I say, the rose water is if we do the old like royal icing to go on top. So that's going in there. So we now add this mixture. While I did that, hardly paused. Anyway, I'm just going to scrape that into there, and then we're just going to work this together into a dough, and that will then be, ball sticking out my hand, probably have to get a bigger spatula for that one. It says making a mess already. So we're just going to work this together to form a dough that we can then roll out. Now we're not rolling it with a rolling pin, we're going to be rolling it into sausages, if you like. So I've worked that all together. I've kept finding pockets of flour, so you need to make sure you're giving it a good mix together. And now this is going to go in the fridge, covered over, for about 15 odd minutes before we'll need a little bit of flour to roll these out. Like I say, we're going to be rolling like cylinders and then tying them in knots. As it happens, the very soft dough, very buttery, and as a result I found that actually adding the flour, it just slid all over the place. It was very difficult to roll it. So I've actually just been rolling it on the work surface. I've got one batch in the oven already, and you can see it, all I'm doing is just rolling out into thin cylinders. Some I'm leaving the cylinders, some I'm curling, some I'm trying to plait. It is quite difficult to shape it because it is so soft. So just make it into whatever shapes you want. You can, if you want, roll it and cut it into hearts or something like that. But we've just got two batches like this. The rest of the dough's in the fridge, chilling down. You do want to keep it chilled as long as possible. It warms up very quickly. That makes it even softer and more harder to actually shape, without sort of misshapen it when you move it onto the baking tray. So I can't remember if I said the oven's on about 180, 190, and I've got them in about 15 minutes. They may want a little bit longer, but you'll have to have a look and decide. And then we're going to take them out, put them on a rack to let them cool completely, to then ice some or all of them after. So now we're just going to make some royal icing. Okay, and for that I've got, because I only want a small quantity, and this will harden as it's exposed to the air, so basically you don't want to make too much if you're not going to use it all. So I've got half an egg white, and I'm going to add to that half a tablespoon of rose water. In this case you can just use ordinary water if you wish, and then I'm just going to beat that together. Now you can do this with the electric mixer. It's just for the quantity I've got here, I found it was a little bit lost on it. And then we're going to beat into that, or whisk into that, 125 grams of icing sugar. And I've got a piping bag ready to go. So I'm going to start by just gently mixing that in. If you're on the electric mixer, go slow to begin with, otherwise you'll be like I am a little bit here. Anyway, smothered in icing sugar. So, trying to get that combined, and then pour that straight into that piping bag, and at which point we want to sort of seal it off, if you like, stop the air getting to it, because we don't want it hardening just yet. So that's got that all mixed in there. I'm pouring that into that bag, laid out on a baking sheet. My biscuits, my knots, and I'm now just using sort of a fine hole in the end of that piping bag. I'm just going to drizzle icing sugar, and you can see why I've got it on baking paper, because I don't particularly want all of this setting on my work surface. Now you can, if you want, coat some of the biscuits. Here's some, the rest are still, well, even these they aren't fully dry yet, the icing, but that batch there, oops, that one's caught up on top of another. So there you go, there is the Reverend Henry Fairfax knots from around about 1630. So caraway flavoured biscuit. Let's give it, this one's a little bit overdone, let's give it a go. You get that flavour of the caraway. There's quite a lot in there, almost like fennel. Now I did try one before I iced them, and just that little drizzle of sugar on top actually improves it immensely. Not that there's anything wrong with it before, not that there's anything wrong with it. Oh, get it? But I think that sugar just enhances that a little bit more. Oh, thank you very much, Reverend. Your sugared knots or gumballs from your receipt book of about 1630.